All right, and we are live. Outstanding. So welcome to the MBSE Outcomes Gap Live Roundtable. Really looking forward to this discussion. We have three other practitioners. I'll introduce them in just a second. But I'm your host, Chad Jackson. I'm the CEO and Chief Analyst with Lifecycle Insights. And today we're going to be talking about kind of expectations around systems engineering and MBSE and reality. Um, but before we get into that, I'll share some research findings here in a second. I want to go around the horn here and do some introductions. First off, Anand Rangaramu with
Yes.
Quantum Fuel Systems, and also just recently was also with the Shift Group. Uh,
Right.
Anand, why don't you just take a few, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds, something like that. Give a little bit of background about your career, where you've been focused, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. I'm Anand Rangaramu. So I'm doing system engineering for almost 20 years now. So I started with Cummins as a diesel engineer, calibrating the diesel engine, developing the after treatment system for Cummins.
Mm,
And later I moved to a company presently, which I'm working with Quantum Fuel System, where we did lot of hybrid vehicles back in 2006 and 2007, where hybrid and EV vehicles were very less. We were one working with the CARB and EPA to integrate take the OEM vehicles, fit in with lot of hydrogen systems, battery systems, CNG. We did a lot of alternate fuel systems because we were associated with carbon DPA. There is another company, AQMD, Air Quality Management District in Los Angeles County, responsible for improving the air quality. So we worked with
mm,
them to integrate a lot of the technologies. Since it's an integration, we already had a EM vehicle available, so we had developed a special kit to go with this vehicle. That's where my system engineering comes into, and I was responsible for integrating a lot of different kits onto the vehicle and give as a solution. Yeah, I will stop there. Thank you.
outstanding. Thank you so much. So let's move on to Guy Zur, who is with Cariad, which is part of the Volkswagen Group, right? And you're focused kind of more on the V and V side of systems.
Correct. So excited to be here, Chad. Whew, where to start? So I'm Guy. I am 20 years or so doing integration system engineering activities. I started in mainly commercial aviation, doing defense, in 0 to 1 project. For new technologies, augmented reality for pilots as well, and then moved with the flow to the automotive industry. And there I'm also focusing on the right side of the V, design verification and validation, mainly for the hardware systems, but also a bit of the hardware software integration. Aside of that, I recently wrote a document or co-authored a document for INCOSI about a common sense guide for system engineering, which shows how to take my experience and apply it, or my experience, like the system engineering experience, and apply it on multiple projects and different company styles, which I think really applicable to what we're going to talk today.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's in a
Great.
nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the overview there. And then we have Branden Ramsey. Branden is with Barrios Technology, but has a long career in the A&D sector. Branden, why don't you give an overview?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started off in aerospace. I'm computer engineering background from Texas A&M, and then went on to get a master's in technical management. And so I started more on the computer software side of the equation, built flight hardware that's still running on the International Space Station. Then took a detour into oil and gas land for quite some time. Did some firmware, mechanical systems, those types of things for downhole drilling and exploration, and then returned to aerospace, most recently with Axiom Space, building the world's first commercial space station, and now with Barrios Technology. Over there at Barrios, I run the technical integration manager position that holds the systems engineering and mission integration kind of cohort for a variety of NASA programs, as well as some commercial programs. So everything from Orion to Gateway, as well as some of the CLD or commercial LEO destinations like your Axiom or your VAST, those types of things. And so running the systems engineering department there, where we're touching a lot of different things over on at the aerospace side.
Excellent. Awesome. I'm really excited about this conversation. Let's jump into that. But before we do, real quick, if anybody out there that's watching has a question, add it in. And we have specific sections where we're going to be taking live questions, not just kind of doing roundtable discussions. So with that said, let me kind of set the stage here. So in December and January, we ran a research study focused on a lot of different things, but part of that was around MBSE. And we had questions around what are your expectations in terms of use? And then where are you getting kind of business benefits? I was really surprised by the results. So reliability and quality, folks wanted business outcomes there. 48% cited that. Only 29% cited that they actually realized those benefits. Traceability was actually worse. It was 48% that said they wanted it. Only 9% cited that they had kind of realized it. And lastly, collaboration and coordination, which isn't typically what you see as a top line thing for MBSE. 67%. It was actually the top rated one that people wanted to realize. Only 24% realized it though. So that's where that outcome gap, it's in the title of the event, kind of comes into play, and we're going to be focusing a lot on that today. So I want to first talk about the business case for MBSE and where gaps might be there. And Anand, I kind of want to throw this to you first, and then Guy and Branden, we'll turn it back over to you. So what does it take to build a credible case for MBSE? We talked about this a little bit on the podcast, but I'd like to get your take on that.
In a conventional requirement analysis, you start putting those things into document and then try to work it through where you don't have a design or you have to wait for the hardware to arrive. That's where I see a lot of MBSE helped me is before even I have a hardware in hand to integrate, I would start putting into a model and then coming with an interface, both electrical, mechanical, and software. So where conventional systems, where I would have to separate them out, or there was no interlink between them, there was not a one person can look together, where this system engineering MBSE model really helped me to start and be prepared when the real hardware comes so that the integration is much faster. And the later MATLAB models also help you to generate some amount of code based on the MBSE model, also kind of helping towards system engineering. That's a business case I would say is you don't have everything ready to go where your team want to start, get some headspace, and then continue your development, not wait for somebody to say something. So MBSE definitely helps in a business case to give you a head start.
Okay. All right. Really good perspective. Now, Guy, I'd like to hear from you next, and specifically because I know in the podcast episode that we did, you mentioned that you all are really focused on DBSE, document-based systems engineering. So what I'd like to hear a little bit from you about is how do you tease apart system engineering kind of practices, processes, and methodologies from the use of a model, and where do you see the value of each kind of delivering some advantages? So yeah, what's your take there?
So it depends on the company culture. If you have a strong system engineering department or team in the company, MBSE will take the lead. If you don't, if your system engineering team are laggers instead of leaders, you need to have a fallback to documentation. because this is the lowest common ground. Everybody can understand it. Everybody can work with it. Everyone can read it. And this proved throughout my career. If you have a strong team, MBSE will take the lead, will save time. This is the best. But unfortunately, most of the companies that I've been working at, the system engineer wasn't dominant, or the team wasn't dominant. And then the engineering team, the actual hardware, mechanical, and software team, they are the one who took the leads. And because of that, the documentation methodology or approach was more dominant in these companies. That's throughout my career, and I can elaborate. Last sentence, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, with the increase of AI, I think we'll see more companies fall back to documentation, because AI and Markdown files really show the advantage of that. And I think you need less and less model-based system engineering with the rise of AI. But I'm sure we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, we have a whole section on AI. You can't attend an event nowadays without talking AI in fashion, right? Branden, what's your take here? I mean, I know that you've been in the middle of the MBSE kind of deployments and usage. What's your perspective?
So I think we all agree on what the promise of MBSE is. And what I mean by that is the thought is that you have created this intertwined architecture where you can know when you trade out a bolt what the ramifications are going to be. And especially in complex systems like automobiles, aerospace, planes, those types of things, that becomes quite a task to do on kind of that document front, right? How do you know or quickly check that, right? And so the promise of MBSE was, if we do this modeling, if we get everything stitched together, then we have this system we could go check, right? We can check impact. What is this going to do? What is this going to do to my mass? What is this going to do to my power? Any of those types of changes. I think the challenge has been adoption to some extent of that. That's kind of what you were hitting on there earlier, right? And if it doesn't get adopted, or if it isn't implemented, right, MBSE can feel like an incredible tax to productivity, right? And so what I've seen a lot of times is when that does fall over, it becomes kind of another kind of artifact that you have to maintain. It's something that you have to keep up. And I think traditionally speaking, once that starts to lag behind, or once that becomes not necessarily that source of truth that it dreamed it would be, people abandon it, right? It becomes less useful. If your model is out of date or 5 versions back from what it is, why are we doing this? And I think that's where you see some of that contention piece. And so MBSE has had a little bit of a struggle kind of taking off. The promise is there. And what we were kind of talking about even before we kick this off is, and we'll hit on it because you can't do one of these without talking AI, is the system modeling 2.0. Does that in some way make this easier? Combined with AI, does it make that barrier of entry less difficult? And then do you finally kind of realize those advantages that we all seek, right? I'm a computer guy at the end of the day. We went through kind of a renaissance in that kind of test-driven development phase, right? I think that's what people are looking for when it comes to hardware too. How can I have my engineers immediately test the impact of a change, get that feedback without having to go through documents or go through a manual model or talk to another department in order to figure out whether their change is impactful? Because that way you can start iterating really quickly. So I think that we're still struggling with that, and we have to see, do these new tools and their promises become fulfilled, or where do we go from here?
Yeah.
So,
great Guy.
I'd like to add something that Branden just mentioned about fast pace and engineering take more responsibility, and trend I see recently here in the Silicon Valley is more flat organizations. Companies would like to have less management overhead. They want the engineers to be the managers, manage themselves, manage their time, and manage activities and reach out to others. And because of that, there is a fallback also to the documentation, less of model-based system engineer. I think mainly because of training, because as Branden says, an extra overhead, extra thing that people need to learn, and we have enough on our shoulders. So that's what I see looking around and poking with my friends and peers. There is a fallback right now to more of the documentation and I would say more of an old school, but also it's more of industry dependent. This is something also we need to talk. In the automotive, I see less system engineers. Aviation, I saw it more. Aerospace, yes.
Yeah, really,
And
really good perspective there. Anand.
Yeah, so my comment is sometimes we are really system engineering get enthusiastic to develop a design. We want to see those models at the engineering level and prove them out, all the advantages we get. And when our suppliers fail to provide an interface document like that, either he will just send, okay, your requirement is in a PDF or some kind of a working thing. Again, we have to take them and put it into our model to make it complete. So that's where their versioning scheme, again, there will be new versions coming every few years, and then what goes to our system and developing the interfaces and designing those third party supplier components is what little painful, but we can handle our system very well. But when it comes to third party, we got to know a little more to integrate our system and make it completely 100%. That's where a little bit of go back and forth to make it a little complications, and then whether we are ahead of the curve to other department, make sure we provide them latest greatest is always very challenging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great points. So we have our first question from the audience. I'd like to speak to that. Here it is. MBSE is a big undertaking. Can you talk about the path to building up from a small scale proof of concept win to more full scale implementation? Is this the way, a way to increase buy-in among executives and increase the appetite for the financial cost, potential slowdowns that can occur as part of such an initiative? Who wants to speak to that one? Anybody have thoughts? It's a big
Yeah,
one.
I'm happy to jump in there. I've done a couple of different rollouts, some successful, some not as much. And what I believe with any change management at that kind of scale, you're looking for quick wins, which I believe is kind of the heart of that question is how do you not do this massive undertaking where you roll it out everywhere to every department on every, because that's incredibly difficult, and the returns that you may see for that may not be months, even years potentially. And so how do you find those quick wins? And I think we talked about this when we did our podcast together, Chad. I think you look at two things. One, where are you in the development cycle? Because I think MBSE kind of solves different problems. And so if you're late in the development cycle, modeling a larger part of the system is going to give you a better return because there's less change. And so the more that you can model, the more you're going to get to that answer. If I swap out of a bolt, what does it do? And it makes a lot of financial sense because at that place you've got something in the market, it's producing revenue potentially, right? And you want to protect that. So every change you want to make sure it doesn't destroy that revenue that you're generating. However, if you are a new product or commercial space or starting something from scratch, you don't want to model everything because the change will eat you alive, right? You will constantly be chasing your tail to keep your model up to date, those kind of things. And so in that environment, I would recommend what are those things you want to test or verify as soon as possible. And those can be assumptions, right? And so if you model that and then maybe kind of tackle it from there, that's where you can kind of break that MBSE rollout into smaller functions. Yeah. So you could say, hey, this particular piece is something we're going to iterate on quite a bit. We're going to sink our resources into this because we want answers, not documentation. Later on, you're going to need both because you're going to be able to have that full stitched together system, and you want to test everything into the system. But by breaking it into that smaller chunks, you can potentially get those wins. People can see the value that they're getting, which is not documentation, but really testing assumptions of your design and getting that feedback. And then that potentially snowballs into more areas, more resources that you could use to model those types of things.
Yeah,
I'll jump in again. I think there is no silver bullet as much as I wanted there to be, because from my experience, sometimes if you're doing a change from existing system, then I'm not sure I really need the model-based system engineering, because I have something I can straight go to field and retest it. So perhaps modeling and digital twin will help me. That's correct. But if I don't have them, I think it's too late to add them now to the party. So sometimes it depends when you are in the project, which type of project, what the maturity of the project. So I would say the best solution would be to create sort of questionnaire and understand where you are in the process, in the project, in the maturity, and then make the right decision. I think, as Branden said, sometimes it's okay, it's good to have it, and sometimes you say, well, we're too late, like we already deployed everything. Let's just do it, and that's it. Just do it.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting.
So
Anand,
go ahead.
What I think in generally is you will have a lot of opportunities to create a smaller project, because it is difficult to shift from a conventional requirement if you have already established and all of the sudden pick up a big one. So there are a lot of small projects we can do. For example, we did something like a camera integration. So very simple project for us to integrate a camera into our system, but it exposes a lot of interfaces and what are all the different supplier, how are you going to integrate, how your electrical team benefits from those connections, how mechanical team fit into this. So it's just system engineering is just not one team. It involves a lot of departments, and with a smaller project you will learn how the interaction going to be between the teams, and everybody start feeling comfortable with those models over the time. I would say don't hesitate yourself to try. So I would say if there is a scope with a smaller project, that's the best opportunity to try and learn and develop the interfaces, and work through all the different problems in within a smaller project when the time allows. That prepares to a bigger project. That's how we did completely the fuel cell vehicle we did with the MBSE with a smaller project. Meaning if you start with a very big, and if you don't know, I think that's where everybody's scared of. But you always have an opportunity, and to test would definitely help.
Yeah, good, excellent. Okay, so we should move on to the next topic. These conversations can expand so much. It's great, but we do have a lot of stuff to cover. I'd like to talk about, and actually this is related to what we just talked about, the productivity gap. So, I cited the findings earlier. I want to talk about how modeling everything can turn MBSE into a burden, right? So, where and how do you determine what you do model or what falls in the scope of what you capture, either in models or documents? And we could talk about both. And how do you look at this in terms of agility versus rigor, in terms of process and making sure you check all the boxes as well? Branden, I'd like to throw that one to you first, and then we'll hear from the rest of you as well.
Absolutely. So Guy hit on a really good point kind of when we were talking, right? I think you have to examine what benefit are you trying to get out of the model. And in some cases, you may be faster just building a prototype, right? Because that's going to be more real world and give you feedback that even a model may not be able to get you.
Mm-hmm.
And so with all of these, you really have to weigh it. And I know we talked about it. The problem is it's not formulaic in making that determination. You really have to weigh what benefit am I going to get out of it. And so if your benefit becomes, I'm just looking to document what has happened, right? There are probably better and faster ways to do that. If the benefit is I'm trying to get an answer faster than perhaps I could build a prototype, or perhaps the prototype is too expensive, right? Elon blows up rockets, but some private companies, that's a little too expensive to do so. And so there may be some iteration that may need to occur in a model-based or simulation environment. And we're talking model-based now, but simulation, analysis, all of these are tools to me that you're using up and down the chain. And you're really trying to make that determination, which is there is 100% a cost to doing MBSE, and you have to make sure that it is worth that value that you're going to get on the back end. And so I think the mistake is you swing one way or the other and say we're doing all MBSE or we're doing, no MBSE. And I think it is just another tool in the toolbox to be able to use where you should and where you can. Yeah.
I was going to say that intrigues me quite a bit because it almost speaks to the need for a competency to figure out which tools you apply in which cases and where they're justified and where they're not justified in making educated decisions and not just dogmatically applying something all the time. So, Anand or Guy, what's your perspective on this question?
Go ahead.
So from my experience, I think this is exactly my point of view. It's just another tool, another thing in your toolbox, right? To use if needed and know when to use this option, the MBSE. But I keep reverting. You need to have the right culture, the right organization culture to accept to use that, because it comes with a cost. And the higher management, at least from my perspective, what they've seen sometimes, they see, well, it's just an overhead, just a burden. They don't see the results. And through my experience, you need to have the ability to communicate that to the higher manager up and saying, hey, listen, this is how much money we invested, this is how much money we saved, and keep pumping it. Because what they see right now, because of MBSE is relatively new in this industry of aviation, that it's I would say almost 100 years. What I see that there is always tendency to fall back to what is to the physical, what I can feel, what I can see. And MBSE is all ambiguous. It's hard to feel it, hard to see that. It's in the cloud, it's not here. And you need to have something measurable that you can present to others and continue to have a kind of a public relationship of the department, say, this is what we've done, this is what we've done, this is how much we saved. So it's another toolbox. It gives you a lot of benefits and advantages, but you also need to nurture it and treat it in a different way. That's something I learned in my career. Again, it comes with its own set of rules and housekeeping if you want to make it more successful.
Mm-hmm. Really interesting. Anand, any thoughts?
I agree. One more thing very important with the model-based system is we can avoid a lot of conflicting requirements. So think it is very easy to we say, okay, the requirements can be written on document and pass on, but without, if the requirement grows beyond, sometimes a conflicting requirement could really hurt the product. So I have seen that. So this is one benefit of MBSE, is to avoid conflicting requirement and also map the rigorous testing. When we deliver, we are in a very fast-paced product. So we are delivering actual vehicles within like a 2-3 months time, where we are missing the complete vehicle validation or a final product validation, or what we need to test at the time, at least to ensure a lot of safety concern. So MBSE gives you that provision rather than a document method of doing, or we have to make someone responsible, then making a system responsible and say, okay, these are all the few things I can test to ensure my design and my interface is safe enough. So it's not that we rule out MBSE just for, it's an overhead or a thing. There are good use cases in a fast-paced development. Of course, some of them are overtaken by AI now. I don't know how we can come up with the AI in the system engineering yet, but it provided a lot of good things during the system engineering and deliver a quality product. I think the company has to see the quality what they're delivering versus little of these efforts to maintain it. I would say the quality takes over, and as long we don't deliver unsafe product, and if MBSE help to provide a safe environment and safety of the product, that is the most important thing.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
So Anand, you mentioned that we need to see the organization, understand and collaborate, and also you mentioned something, seeing the quality of the artifact. So how in your experience, how did you measure that?
It's little difficult because some of if like we can only measure by number of failures happened post the release, or if the previous project had any kind of such incident, and what's our learning is. With the MBSE, what I would like to say is, in general, if the product is in a similar architecture or similar domain, we can make sure there is no repeated mistakes. We can have some regression testing of the product defined within your scope, and you have an option to define those at the very beginning, or you can define what are all my regression testing while designing, so that when at the time of delivery you don't miss those and kind of neglect those. Instead of a documented approach, your ML gives you a more systematic way of ensuring you check those boxes for the quality audit or quality. The traceability also plays a role, that you don't miss any of those tests. Even though it's kind of repetitive for some of the tests, but you will ensure that safety is not compromised. That's the advantage I see in the system level with the MBSE products.
Good.
I understand. Thank you.
Yeah. There's one thing I would like to dive a little bit deeper into, and Guy, I think you mentioned it, culture, and how that plays into all of this. And part of that makes me think about this concept of a willingness to surface failures early, and being able to accept that, and frankly having a reaction from executives that are not going to kind of come after you if you have something like that. So I'd like to hear a little bit more from all of you about how culture plays into this. How is it different with systems engineering, or maybe early prototyping, or MBSE? Guy, let's start with you. You started it. I'd love to hear from you first on this topic.
So receptive or acceptance of failure is something that's extremely close to my heart. And every organization I've been, I cherish, I nurture a culture where it's okay to fail, as long as you fail once and you communicate, hey, this is what I've done, this is what I've done wrong, and why it happened and how we can do it better. Have lessons learned in the company. It's something that I always have it in my team, and make sure I publish it to others. I publish my mistakes also, like when I do something that, hey, I think this is when I was wrong, and I tell it publicly to the team in a safe, mainly in a safe space, so they know that, I am human as well. And this is important. It is create a culture of people willing to share, willing to talk. And I've seen other organizations, by the way, mainly in the automotive, less, by the way, in the aerospace, that are less tolerant to failures. Why? I think it comes from the higher management, and talking about VP levels and up, where they kind of with the back to the wall and say, hey, I need to deliver that so-and-so, and there is no room for failure. But what it creates a culture of people that are afraid to dare. And I need, in my team, because we're designing new technology, I need people to be adventurous. I want them to try something new. And we need to communicate and talk. What are the risks? What are the challenges? Know that we can fail, and then have a backup plan and say, well, if we fail, this is what we're going to do. Talk. I think it's all communication that allows you to have this good organization culture. And sometimes, again, mainly in automotive, I was able to build my own island of safety environment to talk when I'm overarching my team and say, hey, this is what we're going to do, and this is the plan, this is the fallback, this is the risk, go ahead. If someone comes to you and say you were wrong, put me in the loop, because I am here, I'm protecting. And this creates the culture of safe space. Because when there is no safe space, people will afraid to take risks, and then will start to be finger pointing. It's not me, it's him, it's because of that. Paper trails, things that eventually ruin creativity. And designing projects from 0 to 1, being revolutionary, we need creativity. When I interview people, I look for creative people. So doesn't make sense. I look for creative people, like bring them to the organization, and then I kill their creativity. What's the point?
Yeah, I think that's great. That's outstanding. Anand or Brandon, which of you want to take that question next?
Yeah, so I mean, Guy hit on it, right? You're creating that culture where people can iterate towards a solution, right? I believe that is one of the goals of your MBSE is to be able to iterate faster. But to your point, if people are worried about using a system that is going to expose a small failure, so that other people can learn from that, adjust the design, those types of things, then is the system going to work, right? If they're doing something on paper or outside that system because they're worried about that trust and it being safe enough to fail in public, if you will, then yeah, you're removing one of the major benefits of MBSE, which is really to try to iterate your way to a solution, which is a very powerful learning method, right? It's how we learn very complex things when we're kids. Like when we learned to walk, we didn't read books on kinematics and dynamics, right? At least my children didn't. But you learned it through failing, right? And if you think about how hard it is to build a robot that can walk like a human, how complicated that is. But yet humans learn it really quickly through that iteration. And so it's a very powerful tool if you can get the culture buy-in of it's okay to fail, because now you're multiplying that learning across an organization. When you can see one person failed over here in a design, now that becomes learning for the entire group, right? And so it's an incredibly fast way to get there, but you're right, people have to feel comfortable. And Guy hit on how you build that trust, right? As leaders, you have to reward that type of open transparency. Like, hey, I messed up here. Let me tell you why, because you might be able to learn from it. That's what you encourage, right? So,
Yeah, great.
I agree. So the culture is very, very important. The reason is in a smaller companies, I know the big companies manage a system engineering group very well, but the smaller companies where system engineering guys either jump directly into coding themselves or even writing some test cases or validating on the product. So that is a time when they will get either frustrated or they don't want to backfill what was done. So they would directly go to the coding level and try to fix the problem and then write one liner and done with it. It's very difficult to come back and fix the models or MBSE models at that time. So I would say it is companies sometimes they have to put some human capital to maintain this. So for the betterment of all the products going forward, not cut short the the implementation or just say, hey, these are all bug fixes and don't roll it back or anything like that. So maintainability is a little bit effort, but it pays off because your next product will have a decent models to come with. So you need not to develop every time everything from scratch. You always can use the earlier models to go to the next level. That's my kind of a lesson learned.
That's great. Great stuff. Excellent. Uh, we don't have a whole lot of time left, and I really want to make sure I want to spend some time on AI. And we've touched on it here in a couple different ways already. I think it was very interesting. Guy, you talked a little bit about how AI can be relevant and make document-based systems engineering more viable. And then on the other hand, Brandon and I were talking before the live event started about how SysML has become less diagram oriented and become more code oriented. And when you think about coding from an AI perspective and how productive it can be, I think there are some implications there as well. So, Anand, I would love to hear from you first. What do you think are some of the implications of AI on model-based systems engineering? Obviously, there's a big impact on code development that actually you're going to put into the product. But what's your take here? What's your perspective?
I see a lot of tools coming to help the traditional method of requirements. So from parsing the email, automatically populating the tickets, and finding out, for example, if you write a code, I have seen in one of the AI, if you write that source code, it will always point to, hey, have you updated this particular test case? It is intelligent enough to tell me that what all the regression testing need to be done to cover these. So
Yeah.
essentially, what we were trying to do manually to ensure through MBSE now the tools are doing by analyzing at a much deeper level. So probably they will also use some of the MBSE concept in the behind to get to some of these, which I don't know for completely, but I believe that is the case. But from the front GUI portion, some of them are getting automated. And I have not seen a lot of MBSE tools picking up those AI yet, but I see traditional methods are picking up those. That's a difference between what is available today is more towards the traditional method, not towards the MBSE. At least in the examples I've seen, like Cursor AI gives you a lot of features, and you can develop. And they will develop back end. And if you give a requirement, they can give a sample code for you to begin with, or if you give a code, it will give you the requirement back. So you have back conversions back and forth. If there is a modification, it can point me where the requirement got changed or need to be changed. I think this is the little bit missing on the MBSE, or my understanding, or which tool to use in those modern technologies. These automated things, or which we were doing manually now, has been improved in a traditional method. Hope MBSE will pick it up and gives me the same capability to maintain much easier now going forward. That's my assumption. And a lot of tools now started converting from one format to the other format. See, these format converters are getting more popular. So if you have a document, if you want to split it into requirements, they will do it. From requirements, if you want to send it to some supplier with a Word document, PDF, it can all be exported, imported very quickly with a button click. So this has made the traditional approaches from your one system to convert to multiple. You no need to format, you no need to spend time to put together an email with a document. So it all done automatically, helping you in a traditional way. So that's where it is a little bit lacking on the MBSE. Hope it will pick it up soon.
Yeah, no, it's really a good perspective. Thanks for sharing that. Guy or Brandon, who wants to go next?
I'll let Brandon. I got lots to say, but let him first.
Yeah, go for it.
So my take on AI is that I think, according to my understanding, that one of the huge advantages of MBSE that it is human facing. It takes everything, create graphics, create visualization, ability for me as a human to perceive the complexity of the system. When I have an AI in my back pocket, or even sitting next to me as a virtual employee or an agent, then I don't need a visualization. I can fall back to the traditional method. I can start working requirements to the links, make sure the requirements are complete, create my agent, and give it a list of quality check if the requirements are well defined, if everything is well traced. I don't need the overhead of the MBSE. And what I think eventually will happen, that most of the work will be done through coding in behind the scenes, and then the AI tools will eventually create a visualization of everything for you as a manager, as a person who perceives. So the system engineering or engineers that we see nowadays, I think some of them will be replaced by AI agents, and they will, and the rest will be reviewers, where you still need the common sense, which AI still doesn't have, or the complexity of how to, or understand the complexity of how to connect different type of engineering together, because this is the essence of system engineering. So still the AI don't have these capabilities of connecting different type of engineering. And believe me, I'm playing with AI. We have some internal project in the company where we try to use AI to improve our efficiency, and it's not 100% there. Per discipline, it's working. But when I try to bridge the gap, and then I can see some funky answers which doesn't align with reality. So back to the original question, I think I'm pretty much aligned with what Anand said, that there will be more fallback to traditional and working mainly on coding and behind the scene, and later it will be more visualization that will be created. That's where I see currently the trends are.
Okay. All right. Good perspective. Brandon?
So I do not know what the future holds, right? To me, it can go two directions. You can go more Terminator route, where we have a couple of good years before the machines take over. Or we could live in a world where we're all, sipping Mai Tais while the AI agents are doing the boring stuff. I think it's probably landing somewhere in between those two. I think what you will get, I know there's constant questions about like AI taking people's jobs. I don't feel like it's at least at this point there, but I do think it can absolutely amplify the work that people are doing, right? I think you mentioned kind of vibe coding, where I believe it struggles today as if you were talking, large architecture driven code sets. It becomes difficult to maintain that completely in vibe coding. However, if you want to build a module or a piece of it or spin up a prototype, it's incredibly awesome at that. And so I do think that the SysML 2.0, kind of moving more into that programmatic language, I do think adds some advantages that AI might be able to leverage those types of things, much like you could vibe code today, kind of a small Python program, you could vibe code your system modeling and spit that out really quick, kind of removing that barrier of entry. And so I don't know, I hope that the future leads to you're empowering each individual engineer to become more of that systems engineer. And so with the leverage of an AI companion, something like that, now you're removing that barrier of entry of something that's complex like MBSE, and you're asking it questions. And again, really just kind of increasing that ability to iterate faster. It is powerful from the documentation method that we have here, because you can feed that in. And then you can ask a chatbot, what happened in this documentation? What changed? What do I need to watch out for? Here's the change I'm imagining I'm going to take. And it can dump out the answer. And so your chatbots, I think, are an incredible, and Guy hit on this, a different UI than we've ever had before.
Yeah.
Always had to drag things, click things, but now you're really just having an open conversation like you would with another employee that happens to know everything about everything. And so it's an interesting world where we're going to go. I think there's a lot of promise there. There's a lot of questions. So I think it's hopeful. We were talking about this too. It's interesting timing that 2.0 came out right around this time that AI is really picking up. And so it might be a really good timing for, leveraging those two together to really amplify the work that every engineer is doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I can, I'd like to add another key factor here is the data that we have to train. System engineering is one of the company's most secret and proprietary information. So there are not enough models who have been trained on that. And I think that the introduction of AI will create advantage to more of big companies who has a knowledge database that the AI can be trained on. And I think it will allow this company to excel more if they're smart enough to jump on the train now and use that. At least that's what I see. And again, when I mentioned that my models currently are not focused, not give me coherent answers, is because they were not trained on the right data. And that's it. That's, I think, the key here. If we'll find the right data models for system engineering, and there is a company selling that, I think it'll be like a gold mine. But right now, not enough companies are willing to share their secret sauce, because system engineering is the secret sauce.
The secret sauce, yeah.
Wow, a lot of nodding heads. That's really interesting. Love that. Okay, lightning round. Last question. Each of you can get like a minute. So, what's the one thing you wish engineering leaders understood about MBSE or DBSE? Guy, in your case. Guy, why don't you go first?
Wait, I'm not ready yet. Give me 2 more minutes or a minute to rearrange my thoughts.
Let's go. Anybody else? What's the one thing you wish engineering leaders understood about MBSE?
I think it's the topic we were talking earlier. I don't think it has to be an all or nothing, right? I think it is a tool in the toolbox that you can use, and when applied appropriately, you'll get better returns. And when you apply it everywhere, it becomes that overhead piece. And so I think it's really you can do a little bit of it. It doesn't have to be this I'm creating a new department and it's this big undertaking and we're moving everyone into it. You can do it and see where you're getting the value, whether it's working within your culture and stuff like that. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing endeavor. So.
Okay. All right. Really good. Anand.
One thing is there's still we have the integration challenges, even though we have MBSE using. So our leaders think that once the MBSE is ready, all the components will fit in perfectly in the world. There is a lot of lesson learned from time to time, from product to product. It is not like we do the MBSE perfectly on day one and day two. The product is ready for integration. That's the thing that they think, okay, we are moving from conventional to MBSE, and now your integration time is pretty much zero. That's not really the practically true. There is a lot of human lesson need to be learned to integrate into the system to make sure we do a better job. So I think that's where the management need to think that this is definitely going in the right direction, but the still effort is needed for the final product to be functionally working, software wise, mechanical wise, electrical wise, always. That's a one gap that leaders need to understand. This will definitely improve the quality, but it doesn't reduce the effort to zero, so that's a one thing that management better, we train the management to be aware of this.
Good perspective. Absolutely. All right, Guy, you ready?
Yes, I am. So my take here that the higher you climb in engineering levels, then more soft skills you need. And since system engineering relies on mainly hardware, software, mechanical, it's kind of higher level of engineering, then more soft skills are needed. And organizations need to understand that system engineering sometimes can be floating, can be something that you need to be sort of the psychologist of other engineering. You need to come and sit with them. What's your pain point? Allow them to talk, and then go to different engineering discipline and allow them to talk. And then you need to connect the dots. You need to do that in big meetings and also in one-on-one meetings to get this information. Sometimes system engineering need to be the intelligence department of the company to see what's under the hood, what people don't say. And these are the skills that I think that you need to have in order to succeed in system engineering and model-based system engineering in particular. So it's a combination of multiple skill set of engineering. And that's why, by the way, I really love this field, because it gives hard skill and soft skill together. And it's kind of, the right lobe and the left lobe needs to work in synergy in each and every person. And that's why I really enjoy system engineering.
Love that answer. I think that's outstanding. That's really great. Well, Branden, Anand, and Guy, thanks so much for your time today. Wonderful conversation. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. And I think a lot of the listeners and viewers out there will appreciate it as well. If you want more detail on these topics, you should check out the podcast, Change by Design, Engineering Transformation with Chad Jackson. That's me. And we also have an upcoming research report, the state of the MBSE. We're going to share more of the findings from the research that we conducted. Really insightful. Join the newsletter to kind of get notified when that comes out. Thanks for joining everybody today. I hope it was valuable. Would always love feedback on these types of formats. And take care and talk soon.
All right.
Likewise.
Nice meeting you guys.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.